Out in the desert of New Mexico, where the clouds rise in the distance like ancient mountains, yet provide no relief from the burning sun, there lies an abandoned Spanish mission forgotten by time. It was here that priests were slaughtered en masse by an ancient evil. Native Americans and local villagers both reported an unknown person was responsible. The natives called him the Night Walker and claimed he had metal skin. The metal man came like a whisper in the night to their village. A battle took place. Many of their own got injured. Then the Night Walker left riddled with arrows when he realized he couldn't win. His path took him in the direction of the mission. Priests with no means to defend themselves became easy prey to the stranger. At daybreak, native braves went in search of the attacker. All they found was the carnage that was left behind. Bodies of the clergy hung from the wood beams in the ceiling, drained of all their blood. Trackers searched for a day or two for signs of where the monster had gone. No footprints of it leaving the compound were discovered. Every living thing left the area for fear of a curse. The only reason I know all of this is because I have recently been there and read the tales that were left behind. Here is my story. Last week, I drove down the desolate highways and back roads because the interstates were congested with construction. Clouds rose dark and threatened rain above a mountain range in the distance, but my location was bright and sunny. Winding roads led me closer and closer to the towering slabs of rock. Thunderclaps rumbled while a storm raged up in the precipices. Not a thought of caution was given as a torrential downpour happened well away from me. Out of the corner of my eye, a swift motion was noticed. Before I could turn my head to get a good look, water crashed over my vehicle. The violent current that came down from the peak swept me off of the highway and out into the desert. Flash floods are not uncommon, but I never thought it could happen like this. The sheer force of it dented the car door on the driver's side. Pain erupted in my head when it smashed against the window, the impact of which caused cracks to spiderweb through the glass. When my senses came back to me, I was already in the middle of nowhere. Keys turned in the ignition to no effect. Floodwaters must have drowned the engine, or heaven only knows what it had hit while dragged along its path. I got out and took a look around for help. Nothing was visible except that old mission off on the horizon. Scrub brush and cacti tormented each step. Burning rays from the sun beat down relentlessly as hot winds whipped away the sweat. Upon entering the outer courtyard, my feet and legs were a bloody mess. "Hello? Hello? Anyone here?" I called out from the gated entrance. Dead silence was the only response. With a limp, I continued on to the main building. Old wooden doors stood sealed, not with a lock, but with wax and string. In each piece of wax there was a religious symbol, and the golden string was taut between them. I stopped to take a look around for any signs of life. That's when I noticed a well on the right side near the wall. Throat began to burn, mouth became dry and sticky. My hand went up in an attempt to rub away the discomfort. Pain from each step didn't hold me back from the water to quench the desert inside. Rope was still strung around the pulley. A test tug showed it worked. Foul smells came closer as the bucket sloshed against the stone sides. Light glinted off of the precious liquid, almost blinding me. When it finally reached the top, dehydration took over. Hands plunged greedily into the pail in an attempt to drink as much as possible. Despite the curious scent, the water tasted sweet. It's hard to describe, almost like fruit about to turn. Once my stomach was full, I decided to keep up the investigation, returned to the main door, and ripped the seal off. Whatever reason this was put up for must be long gone by now, I thought to myself. The doors protested their entry with an angry groan. Inside, old wooden pews were broken and shambled from years of neglect. Confession booth had collapsed upon itself, and the altar laid ruined. A large wooden cross near the back was split in two, but still hung in its place. Visible from the entryway, deep scratches marked the walls and stone floor. Dust kicked up with each step as I went deeper into the old sanctuary. Hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. An odd feeling came over me, as if a presence was aware of my violation. I turned and ran out of there like a bolt. At the edge of the courtyard, I stopped to look back. Nothing was there. The feeling had passed. What was that? I asked myself out loud. Must have hit my head harder than I thought. Hope there isn't any permanent damage. I started my exploration of the outer buildings in search of anything that might help. The sun by now hung low in the western sky. A place for the night or a way to get out of there was needed. Pronto. Sleeping quarters that still had beds in them were on the eastern edge, but nothing of use was found. I then went on to another building, which looked to have been some kind of meeting hall. Again, no luck in finding anything helpful. Finally, I got to a library. Floor to ceiling, books lined every inch of the walls. Prominently, a desk sat in the middle of the room. On it, a diary written in Spanish laid open. I began to read. Before me was the story I had mentioned earlier. Thank goodness for high school Spanish classes, I said. A group of locals wrote the entries in the late 1700s. It told the whole story of how the man in metal had come to the natives' village first. This man attempted to bite a young woman on the neck while she slept, but she woke up just in time. Her screams brought the others to her rescue. The fight had been 100 to 1. Even then, the Nightwalker was still able to flee as if the arrows had only angered him. They would have given chase, but the wounded were in need of care first. When morning came, they tracked the attacker to the mission. There they found the priests, with cold, lifeless, and drained bodies, thrown over wooden beams like used dish rags. The author commented on how all the faces of the dead looked like withered corn husks. Curiously, not a drop of blood was spotted despite all the death. Natives and villagers alike then left the area, but before they did, the villagers put a holy seal on the main sanctuary where they suspected the demonic creature had stayed to rest. There it would remain unless the seal was broken. I searched frantically through the old tome on what to do if the seal was ever taken apart. Hopes were dashed as there was no instructions on how to regain the barrier. The fact this man only attacked at night offered some comfort. Still, the shock at what happened here caused my chest to tighten. I stumbled from the building with hands over my heart. Outside, the last rays of daylight had vanished. Church bells began to ring. Birds scattered into the air. Blood-curdling yells erupted from the sanctuary. There was no rear exit in the wall. My only escape was out the front. Little time was left. Injured feet were numb to pain by now, which allowed me to sprint. I rounded the corner, only to see at the gate there was a man in a conquistador helmet and chest piece. Tall, slender, with a crooked nose and long, thin fingers like claws, he turned and the red glow of a predator's gaze pierced my soul. We both froze, unsure of what to make of each other. Drawn-out hisses emanated from his lips. He bared his long fangs, then started to run at me. Jolts of electricity shot through my body as I wheeled around to flee. The sleeping quarters were the closest buildings to get to. Sneers and snarls could be heard behind me. Swipes raked at my back as I pushed the flimsy wood door open, then tumbled inside. A swift kick closed the entrance. Splinters flew through the air, and some scraped my face when they sailed past. Deep guttural mutters could be heard from the man as he sauntered up to me. What little Spanish I could understand from him went something like this. I didn't find the fountain of youth to be locked away for 300 years. Murder! Murder! To everyone for what they have done to me. Backwards I crawled to get away from him. Trapped, there was nowhere to go. Leather-booted feet continued their approach. My hands scurried along the ground in search of any type of weapon. Cold, hard metal brushed my palm. Cloth covered the object, but it was heavy. More importantly, possibly lethal. Tightly I grabbed the item as claw-like fingers reached for me. Strength surged through my arm. With a yell and all my might, I swung the metal object at his hand while it gathered my shirt. Smoke peeled off in large plumes. Deep screams shook my bones. For a second, I thought I saw a flame jump from his skin. What I had found was a rather large silver cross that tapered to a spike. It had pierced his flesh. Hastily he recoiled, almost knocking the cross from my clutched fist, but adrenaline had given me a vice-like grip. "Back! Back or you'll get another!" I screamed at the man. Eyes that were once malevolent turned to fear. He spun and fled at the sight of the holy relic. Difficult to say what happened next because it went so fast, but once out the door, he either vanished in a wisp of smoke or turned into a bat and flew off, possibly both. There are two things from this encounter that worry me. For one, he said that he had found the Fountain of Youth. If he isn't the only one to have done that, then there may be more of these creatures out there. For another, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the only reasonable description of him is that he is a vampire. This goes against the legends of the fountain, but it makes sense. It grants eternal youth to those that drink from it, and a vampire never ages. This all seems crazy, that's true, but unless my brain's got really jumbled up out there, it's all I can come up with. Terrible doesn't even begin to describe how I feel right now. Please, forgive me. Who could have known what was in there? If I were you, I would buy some silver crosses and hope you never come across what I have seen. Thank you for watching. We'll always have room for you here when you visit. To keep up on great content like this, like, subscribe, and please share. Have a nice day.